My name is Laurelee, and this is It's Not About Food. So it's not about food, and it's not about weight. What is it about? Everything else, because it's never ever about food or weight. Never ever, not even one time, not ever, ever, ever. So today we're talking about accepting our bodies exactly as they are right now, which allows us to make peace with our bodies, thereby empowering us to take better care of our bodies. So what we're going to be talking about is, where did we learn to objectify the body that we walk around in? How did we internalize that shame and guilt? What is it about our culture that breeds this hatred and shame of sexuality? And why does this body hatred exist? Why is there so much sexual objectification? And how hard is it to accept the body that we have right now? Not the body that we used to have when we were beautiful teenagers, or the body that we had when we had children or whatever, but just this is the body that we have right now. This is the weight that we are. In my 60s, this is the weight I am. This is the age I am. This is the DNA coding I have. So this must be what it is. And how do we accept that and even go on beyond that to love it enough to take care of it unconditionally? And that if something were to happen to our bodies, wouldn't we be really upset that we didn't have a stomach, or we didn't have thighs or a butt or breasts? We would miss those things so much, even though we hate them a lot of the time. Or I should talk about myself. I had such body hatred, especially about my stomach. And I really had to use, there's a great book called Overcoming Overeating by Carol Munter and Jane Hershelman. And they use this beautiful example of that. Tonight, if you got home and you went to bed, magic dust was sprinkled on the universe. And when you woke up in the morning, that's the body that you have. The only thing is it gets older, but it's that size, that color, that body. So what would you do? Would you jump off the bridge, or would you go ahead and eat ice cream? Would you never go on a diet again, because what's the point? Or would you just go ahead and put on a bathing suit and jump in the water? What would you do? So I just want to talk about that whole idea of learning how to accept the body that we have, because we had it at one time when we were little. We liked our bodies when we were little. Maybe for some of us, it's been a long, long time. But, at some point we were okay with our bodies. And then what happened, and how do we get back to that? So today I have Meg as my guest.
Hello.
Hello. And I'm going to let her talk about herself and how she came to this work and what she's doing with especially accepting the body as it is. And then we'll have a little discussion about it.
All right. Well, thank you. Mm-hmm. So I'm Meg Tinsley, and I'm a marriage and family therapist in California. And I used to work with Laurelee at Beyond Hunger for a long time, like 5 years, maybe something.
And
like
I
that.
still miss you.
I know, I miss you too. It's been too long. This is just like back in our group.
I know.
So we used to facilitate groups together, and now I just have a private practice in Petaluma, and I work with a lot of women, and so inevitably this kind of stuff, comes up all the time. I mean, whether it's someone who has technically, disordered eating, textbook disordered eating issues to deal with, or just someone who, occasionally, feels like they don't like their body if they're having a bad day. Then all of a sudden they think, well, I'll just, go on this new whatever kick, like 30-day challenge, whatever.
And that'll make me feel better.
And then I'll feel better about, whatever's going on with my boyfriend, or, like my menopause or, whatever it is. So
we expect so much of our bodies
to
take this load all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I love that when, whenever I've worked with you and you've talked about how when you're a little kid, I mean, if you look at little kids, you see that they completely are in their bodies. They don't know that, they're sitting next to Sally, whose arm looks like this, and Joey, whose arm looks like that, and their arm or leg or whatever looks, totally different than all the two of them.
They don't care.
They don't care. They don't care about the skin color. They don't care about the size. They don't care. And then somewhere along the road, for women, especially in our culture,
right,
whether you have something that's more identifiable as disordered eating or just general kind of malaise and discomfort with yourself and your body, which I think most American women have at some point. I mean, maybe some don't. The lucky few, but
or that's just not their thing.
That's just not their thing, right?
It's
like they have
else,
other ways of,
coping.
But it's so often constellates around that for young women. And it's almost like, I think one of the reasons why I like to do this work is because there's a part of me that's just pissed about it. I mean, I think, early on, I just became very feminist when I was about 19, many years ago. And I think so when I noticed some of this stuff in myself, some of this, difficulty accepting my body, I think initially my way of accepting it was like, well, God damn it. Like,
right.
That, which actually is fine. I'm fine with that.
Exactly.
Like that can carry you for a long time,
It can.
Like of just like, I get to be as big as I need to be, or, this is my body, or, I'm not going to shave my legs or, whatever. Like, I'm not going to be your, what the
Barbie.
Yeah. Like just you're talking about the sexuality piece and the objectification, that it's all tied in to these things, the body hatred that women learn, I think.
Yes.
So I kind of defiantly said, forget you, and that worked for a while. And then now I feel like it's kind of more about really truly where I like this particular principle is just that it's much more gentle. It's not so screw you. It's more like, I'm going to love my body and accept my body because this is my body.
That's right. Because it's the only one.
As far as I know, I only have one.
Right.
I mean, if the Buddhists are right, then we get to come back, but we don't remember anyway. So,
right.
And
who knows? Maybe we get the same body again.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't get this one right, if you don't learn to accept this one, you might get the same exact thing that you struggled with in the last lifetime. So
chances are.
Yeah. And I mean, currently what's going on for me is that I just had a foot surgery. And so I've had to really, I mean, this has been something that, whether I've been aware of it or not, I've had to work with accepting where my body is in a different kind of way than with size per se, but just, after a foot surgery, it's like, I can't exercise. I can't do really the things that make me feel normal. My foot doesn't work properly. And, and I've really had to, just drop into that more kind of, it's kind of feminine, I think. Acceptance is kind of feminine, we all have masculine, feminine, but it's like surrender to like what is true, like if I were to fight reality and just, I mean, I feel like sometimes when I work with people with disordered eating, it's like they've had a foot surgery and they're like, no, I didn't. I'm going to walk on my foot.
Yeah. That's not.
And so they'll hurt themselves.
Stitches.
There's no pain there. There's no, I don't like this pain. That's what it is. It's not that there's no stitches. It's like, I don't like this pain.
And I just want it to be over.
I want it to be over. So I'm going to go walk around right after I had surgery. And then of course that causes more problems and then consequences. And then they feel bad about it. That's God, I've hurt myself. But it's kind of, I just thought of that.
So
it's kind of like that. Like with disordered eating behavior, it's like shooting yourself in the foot.
Right.
To try to make yourself feel better when really actually you just end up making things worse.
Exactly. But the part of us that thinks, so like if we think about that all parts of the eating disorder are how we take care of ourselves.
Exactly. Right.
So if whether it was overeating when I was with my eating disorder or whether it was severe body hatred, that also took care of me.
Right.
Because I didn't know how to feel lonely or upset or overwhelmed. but I really knew how to feel fat.
Yeah.
I knew how to feel that.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's almost the safer thing to go to.
It is.
You know? Well, and then with my surgery, I noticed also a couple weeks ago that I was starting to get fixated on the way my thighs looked.
Oh.
The dimples on my thighs. And that they
helpful.
must be, I was convinced that they must have changed in 4 weeks. Like that my thighs look different than they did. And now I had aged, in 1 month I had aged 5 years.
Yeah.
And
you'll never get it back.
And I'll never feel the same way. And so there was this panic that set in. And then what I realized was actually, whether my thighs are all that different or not, I don't really know. I didn't take a picture before and after.
Probably not.
Does it matter? Not really.
Look exactly the same to me.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is that I realized when I kind of relaxed about that sort of fixation I was having on my thighs, I realized that what I was really afraid of was that the surgery wouldn't work all the way. What if I don't get the mobility back in my foot? Which are sort of more to me like actually more my real anxieties, and things that I don't have control over. The way I don't know that I have control over dimples on my thighs either at this point
or
in my life at 50.
Really.
But exactly right. But there's this feeling. I think it's so like you have some sort of some feeling or some anxiety that comes up, and then there's this little like shift that the mind can make, to focusing on the body, and for a lot of women and definitely women with disordered eating, shift to going, oh no, I'm not okay. I'm going to reject myself. And then, I can just do this to make myself feel better. And then you feel like you're doing something.
That's right. I'm working towards a goal.
I'm working towards a goal, and therefore I'm acceptable. It's this way of it's like a way of like metabolizing feelings.
So good.
In a way that's like,
that
feels
something.
Better. You people end up feeling better. Like when I work with people, like one of the things it's like when I talk about it, this is one of the things that when I work with people, this is the thing that people resist the most is accepting their bodies.
That's right.
It really is.
It is.
I'm always surprised by it. Even though it's, it's because it's so insidious. It's because if you're not working on yourself in our culture as a woman, working towards some other
looking better,
ideal,
being better,
improvement. If you're not improving, then I don't know what it's the, then you're not valuable. You're not a valuable human being. Like you have to be going paleo. That's what's today. In the 80s, it was complex carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Now carbohydrates are bad. Right.
Remember
carbo loading, which is what I did before field hockey games.
Yeah.
Carbo loading before field hockey games. Now that's bad.
That's
Carbs
bad.
are bad.
Now it's protein loading.
So now it's protein loading. Everybody's walking around constipated. Because they're not eating enough grain.
I know.
It's the truth is that various food choices work for various. You just have to tune into your own body, and for some people, some things work over. I'm not poo-pooing something. If someone found something that really works and you feel like so much better in your body, like fine, fine. But it's like these fad things. We can't all be paleo, right? And the paleo people, they live to 30. In the Paleolithic era, right?
Exactly. Like
so they did really well until 30.
Right.
So is that really the best model? I don't know. Anyway, we're digressing a little bit.
I know. Well, if you really start to tune in on how many things are keeping us away from accepting the body that we have.
Yes.
So we'll even eat like a caveman in order to not have the body, the feminine body that we have.
Right. And then
we'd rather do that.
Right. And does it, and do these things even work? All these, so there's this, you have to be improving yourself. And then the basic, what you said before about just the genetic coding. It's like, I look just like my mother.
Yeah.
A little bit combination of my mother and my dad, and my grandmother. I look a lot like my grandmother. And like all I have to do to know what I'm going to look like at 75 is look at my mother.
That's right.
I'm a larger version. My mom is like shorter than, so I'm like the slightly taller, wider, shoulders version of my mother. I'm the new and improved version of my mother.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like it's all happening. I'm 50. It's all happening. And there's nothing. I'm at the point like, any struggles that I used to have personally with body image, now I'm at the point where I really don't feel like I can control it all because it's really not in my hands. It
No.
never was.
No.
But it's like my body's going to be the way it's meant to be.
That's right.
And I can do this, I love to exercise, but it's like, I can do this exercise. It doesn't matter. Like when I don't exercise, when I exercise, I'm basically the same person. Like I don't know. It's just kind of amusing. As I get older, I think, and one other antidote, I think, to some of this stuff also is to think of, if you have trouble thinking about accepting your body, then one way to look at it is to sort of, what I try to tell clients is to look at what can your body do for you,
Yes.
like a way into feeling more compassionate.
That's right.
Is going, well, look at how your body digests every single bit of food you put into it.
Exactly.
Most of the time, like perfectly.
Exactly.
Every once in a while we get a little bug or whatever. My thighs have carried my poor little foot where I got, that little bone that I had to have removed from my foot, did its work for 50 years. Like, bless it.
I know. I know.
And so the
We'd
easier
be so sad
it is.
if
yes.
things left.
Exactly.
Right.
Now I wish I had that bone for sure. Yeah, when it was past this point. But as I get older, I think it's easier for me to accept because I feel less like I can really fight genetics and just the reality of like where my body wants to be.
Yeah.
And what size and shape it's gonna choose. You
Right.
know?
Right. And that's kind of like that health at every size idea.
Yeah.
That no matter what age we are,
Exactly.
what size we are, what genetic coding we are, doesn't matter.
Yep.
How we are is how we are. And the best thing to do is love that and take care of that.
Yeah.
And that is how we get better. That is how we stay or get healthy.
Yeah.
But we can't even, like right now, there's all this quote unquote healthy eating.
Mm-hmm.
And then what? We're supposed to then live forever?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
really, that's like if we eat the right way and look the right way, then we don't die. That's kind of like the undercurrent of all this.
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
insane.
Well, I wonder how, just to go back to kind of what we're talking about of really when there's negative body image thoughts, that a lot of times I think it signals some other feeling that's going on. It's like a red flag saying,
Yes.
I'm not feeling good about, whatever my work life or this fight I had with so-and-so or.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder about this whole piece about accepting the weight that you are right now.
Yeah.
And liking the weight that you are right now.
Yeah.
So I have, I struggled with that myself, and I have clients that struggle with that.
Yeah.
It's very hard for them because they think if I have to accept my body, that means I have to love it, and I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So they feel like they're lying.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying that. I'm saying
Right.
accept the body that you have. Take care of the body you have. You'll
Right.
learn to love it.
Right.
You may not like it, but it is
Right.
the only one you will get.
Right. Yeah.
And how can you make it be the best it can be without driving yourself crazy?
Right. Yeah.
Accepting its limitations, accepting what it can do and what it can't do.
Yep. Yeah, no, that is a big piece. And I think, it's not saying that you can't have negative feelings about your body. Like you
Right.
will have, of
course.
most women do. If you have disordered eating, you probably will. It's so tied into the inner critic,
Yeah.
So you will have negative feelings. So just almost, it's almost like backing up and saying, accept the negative thoughts
Yes.
and feelings. Those are true. And it's also true that this is the form that you're in this very moment.
Yes,
Like I try to have
exactly.
people, mindfulness is really helpful of like, just sense your body right now. And there's nothing you can do in this moment
Right.
to change anything.
Right.
Like right now, this is where you're at. And it's probably going to be where you're at for, the next little while.
Right, exactly.
Whatever, like a month, let's just say
Right.
it's generally going to be like pretty much where you are right now. We would
It's
hope,
so
unless
true.
something horrible happens, so just kind of that, just acceptance of reality, kind of.
Right, and it's-
not trying to escape your own body.
That's right.
Not trying to escape your own body. It's like an escape hatch from being present in your own body,
Yeah, and that we think that if we look better according to what?
Right.
Such a nebulous
Right.
idea anyway. It's sort of like what is in vogue right now,
Right.
which 100 years ago wasn't that.
Right.
And 100 years from now it might be different
Right.
completely again.
Yeah.
So, but right now we're all supposed to be tall and thin
Right.
and young and blonde and come from California,
Right.
Southern California,
Right.
and be smart and really rich, but not too smart.
Right.
Because then men won't like you.
Right. Right. Well, and back in
there's
the
so many
Depression
rules.
area, having like a sort of plumper, like shoulders and chest was fashionable
Because
that
had
meant
food.
you had money to eat.
Yes.
And you had access to food.
Yes.
You
How
know,
about that?
Yeah, after the
Now you
Depression
need to
and
look
the
like
world-
there's no food.
Now people have to look like there's no food. That
Right.
it's kind of, when you really step back, it's kind of insane. I mean,
It is insane.
it's really insane.
It's really insane. So, how do we navigate through this when, especially, we're, say, I think of myself as this young girl who didn't have any other commodity other than her body. That's all I felt like I had. I had my looks.
Yeah.
That was it. It didn't matter in my family how smart you were, what a good person you were, or your character. It only mattered what you looked.
Right.
So I got the idea that was my only claim to fame. So I better, comply. And
You were a good girl, right?
I was a good girl.
You did what was expected.
I did. And so, for instance, like, what would you say to somebody who is out there, some young woman who doesn't know what you know and is starting to think, I can tell you that my body's not going to be how it's supposed to be in this world right now. What do you say to her?
Yeah. I mean, I think that part of what how I like to hold that is to look at it as an inner critic. I mean, to kind of frame
Right.
it and understand it as like, okay, well, that's your inner critic, talking to you,
Yeah.
And so, what is the purpose of that? And I think there usually is a purpose to a negative body image voice in your head or
Yes.
thoughts and feelings. There's usually a purpose. It's usually sometimes protective, like it's trying to keep you, quote, more acceptable or in line or
Safe.
something, safe.
Yeah.
It's always usually doing something, So for each person it's different, I think, of like what exactly
It's
that
protecting you.
Maybe it's something that your parents said to you. And so in some ways you've just internalized, this is how they were trying to make you more, they were worried nobody would ever marry you if you didn't,
That's right.
whatever, look a certain
right.
way. And so they said these shaming things to you. And then now you're, a grown up or 20s or something thinking, oh, well, they must have been right. So it's kind of seeing some of the patterns, seeing what your own mind is saying to you,
Yeah.
Sometimes that thing of, if you had a friend who spoke to you the way your negative thoughts speak to you, the
Yeah.
way you call what you say to your body and your head,
Right.
would you have that friend in your life? I
No.
mean, probably not, right?
No.
Like that would be really an abusive relationship if somebody was saying,
Right.
look at those thighs or, whatever. it
Every
is,
time they looked at
every
at
time,
you.
Yeah, every time you passed a mirror, every time you passed a reflection, anytime you wore shorts,
Right.
So I think it's kind of a slow process. I mean, of just accepting that you have these negative thoughts.
Yes.
And then kind of, I wonder where they came from.
Right.
I wonder how they're serving you. Is there some protective thing? Do you need to feel protected from something? Do
That
you
is
have
so
fears?
good. Yes.
Like what did your parents fear? What has now become your fear? Like does that person think they're never going to get a mate because their knees are too big or, small or whatever,
Right. And it even goes beyond that, because people who are married and have a loving relationship, they still don't believe that their
Right.
spouse loves them unconditionally. They're
Right.
like, how can you
They
love
won't
this? I
want to
look like this.
Right. I've known people who turn around when they're, they won't let their partner see their backside. So they scuttle out of the room back first because they don't want
Like
their
they're going-
husband to 10
like their
years
husband is the queen?
to see their backside. Yeah, exactly, like their husband's the queen. But I mean, and usually, you know, the husband's very supportive, like not even giving them a hard time about doing that. You know,
I know.
But that it's so in the private life of people, you know, like of a woman that she can't even turn and just let her husband
just be whatever
he probably
she
sees it anyway sometimes when she doesn't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a slow process and being gentle. I mean, the first principle, which is another podcast you could listen to, is so integral to this one, which is compassion, you know? So it's like you have to, so it's dealing with reality, accepting this is my physical form in this moment. It's not changing in this hour, you know? And so you might as well,
minutes,
yeah, so you might, and it's probably not going to change within like a couple days, you know, you know, I know people think that the diets really work, but you know, they don't really. And, you know, but anyway, in the next day, you're going to essentially have the same body. And so just work on showing up with yourself where you are, you know, and starting to untangle too from the cultural downloads about how you're supposed to look and coming from the inside out, you know, like, let's say you don't like this part of your body because you don't see that in the magazines or whatever. It's like, okay, well, let's just separate from that.
Yes.
You know, and start to go, well, how do you feel from the inside out? You know, like breathe. I mean, I'm a big fan of meditation and just breathing and being.
Yes.
And you know, we were talking the other day about how I remember in my 20s, I was having trouble. I felt like my belly was too big. And it was causing all sorts of problems. I was having stomach aches, and because I was tensing up my belly too much. And it was like when I was away at college, and I think I was just nervous about a whole bunch of stuff. And so it fixated on, well, my belly's too big, you know? And so at some point I sort of realized that I needed to learn how to breathe into my belly and take up space. And, you know, put a pillow in front of my belly if I feel self-conscious so that I can actually breathe and take up space.
Yes.
Like be gentle with myself. If
yourself
I don't maybe want to do that publicly or whatever, but like let myself have that extra, whatever.
Yeah.
3/4 of an inch of like,
I know.
You know, like nobody else notices
No.
whether I'm holding in my stomach or not.
Right. And
you know,
nobody
me at 19 in college,
right.
nobody
ran
knows.
away screaming from you or
nobody thought anything of it. But so it's this little it's like this thing internally of working with myself from the inside of like, okay, like breathe, fill up the space that your belly needs, you know, and lo and behold, some of my, you know, stomach issues start to go away because
what a concept,
I started to learn to breathe from my belly. You know?
So I think what we're actually really even talking about is changing our relationship with our bodies.
Definitely.
And maybe like we talked about a minute ago, is that we had a really good relationship with our bodies before. Mm-hmm. And then like shit hit the fan with the societal messages and the pressures of, especially for women in the culture that we live in. Men, more and more men too, obviously. But so now that didn't work.
Right.
And what we're trying to do is get back to this innocent, loving time when we were little and we just thought we were the greatest things ever.
Right.
That our bodies were just terrific.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And sort of like unbrainwashing ourselves.
Exactly.
From what we've been through since we became conscious of what we should do, and now trying to become conscious of that didn't work.
Yep.
And so I just need to love myself again.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes that's too big of a stretch. Like when people think they have to love themselves, like you said before, that's like too big of a leap in the beginning. So it's sort of more about just starting with where you are, just taking up the space, breathing, feeling yourself from the inside out, accepting, even if you don't like it. Right. You know, and then treating yourself with care and compassion, like almost just as a experiment.
Yes.
Like if you loved yourself,
What would you do?
How would you speak to yourself?
Right.
What kind of movement would you like to do in your body? What makes you feel yummy? You know, do you not hate to work out, but you love to dance? Like, go dance.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
You know,
why do we always have to feel the burn?
Yeah. Why does it have to be suffering?
Yes.
You know,
which of course doesn't work ever anyway.
And suffering.
Right.
You know, it's like, it's like, it's this negative and this suffering and this deprivation and this, I'll improve myself. That's like a whole camp of stuff that doesn't actually heal any of this stuff we're talking about.
None.
It's in the other lane.
Yeah.
So if you're in that lane,
come back.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
Come back to you.
Like, I don't trust that to get you where you need to go.
Right.
If it feels gentle, if it feels like kind, if you feel yourself relaxing and taking a fuller breath, just even with something someone says to you, that's what you trust.
Yes.
Like, that's what's going to get you to the place of basically harmony with your body and with food. And if it doesn't feel like that, then it's not it.
Yes.
You know? Like,
it's like intuitive.
Yeah.
Like, learn to not only eat intuitively, but be intuitive.
Yes. And the harsh path the harsh path just gets you more harshness.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to feel harsh about your body, if you want to harshly do a diet and feel deprived, if you want to, that will get you more of that.
Yes.
You know?
Right.
And whatever, if you need to do that because that's where you're at, okay. But what I would suggest is
come back as soon as you can.
But come back as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think people are afraid of being gentle. Like, I know sometimes I'll have people say to me when I suggest that they could be compassionate and they could accept themselves, they think, well, then I'll get really big.
That's exactly what they think.
Because
that's
then
what
it's
I thought.
Kicking the door open.
For sure. Then everything's lost.
Yeah.
All is lost.
So it's like trusting the universe.
Yes.
I mean, it ties in with the spiritual principles that are in other podcasts.
Trusting the wisdom of our own
Trusting
bodies.
your body.
Right.
Trusting the fact that if you eat the whole bag, if you let yourself eat the whole bag of chips, then you might eat the whole bag of chips, but you might stop after half a bag because you're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't need
Exactly.
any more of that. It's too much salt or whatever.
Whatever.
That there's little cues that we have all the time that are leading us back to ourselves.
Yes.
And
the same way
present.
with accepting the body that we have. We can kick it down, kick it.
Yes.
Or we can go, you know what? It has a genetic coding that it's bigger than me.
Yeah.
Bigger than me wanting it to smash into a little mold.
Yeah.
That I didn't even pick myself.
Yeah. And I think that piece is, for some people, that is a really hard piece for them,
Definitely.
to feel like, well, they don't want this body. They don't want to look like their grandmother. They don't want to look like their aunt. And so it's an ongoing process.
It is.
Of like, just breathe, and it's like, well, you talk about sometimes how we don't fight the size of our feet.
Yeah.
Like, I have a size 9.5 feet. I don't wish my feet were 7s. That's not something I think about.
Right.
So it's like, if you have a certain body, it's like having a certain shoe size.
Right.
And a certain eye color, and what if it's just not a fight that's worth even fighting?
No, unless you were, in the last century and you were Chinese and then you had to bind your feet.
Well, right.
Yeah, right. So we're going to look at this, I think, the same way.
Yeah.
Next century, like, can you believe they went on these diets?
They would throw up their food and restrict their food till they almost passed out?
Vacuum out fat out of their tummy? Oh, my God. What were they thinking?
Yeah. There's so many ways to modify the body these days. It can get a little dark and scary.
Yeah.
Just even eye color, you can...
Yeah.
Like contacts, they'll change, so it's like, it's very enticing to that part of the brain that,
trying to,
that doesn't like to accept the body.
Right.
It plays into that.
And going for perfection.
Right. So the culture sometimes supports, that place that doesn't lead down the path to wellness and harmony and peace. It's not always easy.
Right.
The path of wellness, but it's more true. It's like
exactly.
It's more truly healthy.
Yes.
More satisfying at the end of the day.
Right.
And
if really all we had to like our whole path was just be a better person.
Yeah.
Just be kind and nice to people. Just
and with yourself in the front.
be loving kindness.
Be kind to
What if
yourself.
that's all we really had to do?
Yeah.
Nobody could make money on us.
Right.
So,
exactly. It's really insidious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Meg, thank you so much for
You're
being here
welcome.
today.
Yeah.
And I
lovely to
really
talk to
appreciate you coming and talking to me about this.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening. And be sure and follow me on Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and itsnotaboutfood.com. Thanks.